Hello and welcome to our webinar. This is Jacob Finley with Chris O'Brien, and thanks for attending. We're seeing the people pour in here, and we're going to get started in just a second. And here we go. Welcome once again. I'm here with Chris O'Brien. I'm Jacob Finley, and our webinar today is on 5 ways to put yourself out of business. And we're excited to talk about this, not because we want to put people out of business, but we want to help people avoid the pitfalls.
Absolutely.
A little bit about us. I'm the CEO and founder of Fullbay. I'm a CPA by trade, and Chris here is very experienced in private fleet management and also in running a software company. He's our COO, Six Sigma Black Belt and Lean expert. And what we're going to go over right now is basically how this webinar works. For those of you here on the first time, you'll notice on the GoToWebinar software, there's a little box over on the right side that you can make bigger or smaller. It may look like this or slightly different depending on your operating system. If you want to make it smaller, just click the little red arrow there. If you want to make it bigger, click it again. And there's also a place for we're going to launch some polling questions. You're going to see that pop up. And there's also a place over on the right side where you can put in any questions that you have. And we're going to have some time for questions at the end. And don't wait till the end to ask it though. So if a question comes up, go ahead and throw it in over there. And as is tradition from our many webinars in the past, let's see if that is working for you. Go ahead and put into the questions section where you guys are, where you're calling in from. And we can kind of make sure that this is working. So over there on the right side in the questions. All right, Allentown, Pennsylvania, California, Michigan. Oh, they're really starting to come in now. Connecticut, Texas, Indiana, Mississippi. All right, looking good, guys. All right, that is correct. That's how that works. And quick overview of what we're going to talk about. So 5 ways to put yourself out of business. This is what we're going to talk about. And of course, we'll have questions at the end. So basically, use your gut instead of numbers. If you want to drive yourself out of business, ignore the numbers. Use your gut instead of numbers. We're going to talk about that. Allow your cash to sit on the shelf and collect dust. Tune out the voice of your customer. Use the wrong tools. And then finally, ignore your revenue funnel. And if you're wondering what in the world is a revenue funnel, we'll go into that. These are all critical things to pay attention to this year. And here we go.
Yeah.
And to start out, we're going to do a quick polling question. So once again, over in the GoToWebinar, you're going to see something pop up. So basically, do you use a financial modeling tool for your shop? So assuming you're in a position to do financial modeling, do you use a financial modeling tool? So this should show up now on your screen. And while people are answering here, I would imagine there would be a lot of no's here, unless you're talking back of the envelope or maybe some basic Excel. And we talked about this in, was that our last webinar or 2 webinars ago? We showed a financial modeling tool in Excel.
Yeah, and we had a lot of feedback on it. We were basically getting support tickets left and right to, hey, give me a copy of that modeling tool. Can I have that spreadsheet? And
so we got a little surprise here in a minute.
Yeah, we're going to show you where the spreadsheet's nice, but we actually have something
even better. Yeah. Yep. All right, so most people have responded here. So let's close this poll and share the results. So it looks like just over half are a no on that, and then the rest are about yes, 20% yes, and then 20% not sure what we mean. Okay, cool. Let's dive into this. Hiding the results. All right, so number 1, use your gut instead of numbers. A mentor of mine made a comment that has always stuck with me. He was a car dealer, and he eventually amassed a lot of car dealerships before he passed away. And he was a numbers guy, big time. But he said once that, if I were as careful with the numbers as I grew my business as I was when I bought my first dealership, I never would have bought that first dealership. He went more off of gut. And you kind of have to do that to get into business. You try to do as much homework as you can, have your eyes wide open and so forth, but it's always a little harder than you think. So getting into a business, maybe there's a lot of gut involved and it takes guts to do it. But to grow it, you got to use numbers. You can't keep relying on your gut. He was very disciplined and ended up being very successful. And that's where a financial modeling tool comes into play.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't understand all of your costs and those inputs and what you can control and the impact it can have, there's certain switches or levers that you can pull that actually can change the dynamics of shop being profitable or non-profitable.
Yeah.
An interesting thing too is that next point, similar to you, a friend of ours in this business said that you're not a company unless you pay yourself. So a lot of times we run into maybe small businesses, shop owners, there's less than 5 techs, and the owner will say, well, I don't collect a check.
I get what's left over at the end.
Yeah,
basically.
Right. And so one of the things that works, and that can work, but one of the things that we see that's more successful is making sure that you have a burdened salary, like you actually are paying yourself a true salary for your contributions in the business, and you're drawing off that so you truly know what's left over. Because if you're taking everything that's left over, we're going to have some gaps, and we're probably going to have some financial repercussions from that. So pay yourself like a tech. Might be a little bit more than the average tech, but pay yourself.
Yeah. So if you're working in your own business as say a technician, or you're quarterbacking the work or whatever, working in the office, it is important to pay yourself. I've noticed in past lives working in the finance world that there's a phenomenon there that's real, and that is when you force yourself, when you budget to pay for something, for example, paying yourself, when you force yourself to pay yourself and you put it on the budget, you put it on the actuals, you like make the transfer every month to pay yourself, there's a phenomenon where you will find a way to increase the revenue to cover it. Whereas if you don't force yourself to carve out consistently month after month, paying yourself a set amount, you probably won't increase the revenue by that amount. And in other words, it all works out. So if you pay yourself, you're going to figure out how to make enough money to cover that. If you don't, you're going to make less money.
Yeah, and definitely seeing those numbers and knowing you have to cover a certain amount to cover overhead, you'll go out and go drum up that business.
You're going to do a little bit extra, and more likely than not, it's going to be okay. And you paid yourself, right? So you not only get that, but then also if you're the owner of the profits of the business, right? So that one's important. So you got to keep that in mind, right? I mean, if you're using a modeling tool, you got to keep that in mind. Also, controlling overhead. I remember they haven't signed up for Fullbay yet, but I remember a shop I talked to very early on when it was just me and David when we first launched the company. I went on site and noticed that they couldn't convince them to sign up. It made sense logically, and I was still learning how to sell. I'm a finance guy, right? I don't know how to sell. But one thing I noticed, which was crazy, which had nothing to do with trying to get them to sign up, was I think they had 7 people working in the office, and they only had 5 technicians. And I think they might have had 1 or 2 other people that are just, sweeping the shop or whatever, but non-revenue producing. And it was crazy. And I tried to make the argument like, look, you could seriously streamline your operation here, 7 to 5. And the owner's like, yeah, I know it's not good and everything, but I think he had his son and his daughter-in-law, and it was kind of, oh, if you need a job, just call so-and-so, right? And so it's really easy to let overhead grow out of control. So you need to control your overhead. And in a second, in a couple minutes, we're going to show you guys some rough guidelines, and you can also read about this on our website. But are you keeping overhead under control? It should not grow out of control.
Yeah, and I was so we often see new business owners, or we see people branching away from other companies and whatnot. One of the things that's I find the different approaches that each of the groups take. Some believe in a brick and mortar, so they run out, buy a building, buy some land. They've got this $20,000 overhead cost to cover every single month, and they haven't even sold one repair.
Right.
They're just really good at repairs. They've got this client list that's going to come. It's all going to be there, but they ran out and just started with the brick and mortar shop. They're fully in debt, leveraging all of their cash. They're burning cash at this point. I've seen other people approach it a little bit different. Now, again, it depends on your capital and what your plan is and to grow your business, but starting with a couple of service trucks, very low overhead. There is no brick and mortar. You're just hiring the labor or the technician. Maybe you're the technician, and you're managing a couple of payments, and you've got light items on the truck that are in stock, everything special order, extremely easy to control and manage those expenses. So something to think about as you're approaching starting your business or managing your business. It's not always that you have to have a shop to get the preventative maintenance contract.
So that's another thing to worry about, right? Okay, got to control my overhead. Am I paying myself? Are my techs efficient? How is that going? Am I marking my parts up enough? Sometimes people don't even think about that. Am I paying for shop supplies, or do my customers pay for the shop supplies? We run into a lot of shops that don't charge for shop supplies. And it doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but it adds up fast. Comes straight out of your profit.
And heavy equipment too. I know that sometimes the industry will set the tone, or large dealerships will set the tone in the automotive industry, but in the heavy equipment space, I don't recall ever going to a automotive shop and them having brake clean to save my brake pads. It's so inexpensive to change, they just change them.
Right.
Wheel seals leaking, and a brand new brake job was done, you're going to break out some brake clean and clean them up, get that problem solved, and send it down the road. So who should pay for that? Definitely the customer. And in the heavy duty space, sometimes depending on your market, you may not be able to get all of that money, but you'll get it back in a labor charge per hour. Maybe you don't charge that, you charge it somewhere else. You've got to make yourself whole on those shop supplies for sure.
Yeah. Yep, definitely. So at the end of the day, you got to be using numbers, but what if, the majority of the people who responded are not using a financial reporting tool? And another big chunk, are you familiar with what it is? Financial modeling tool. So what do you do? I mean, if you're running a repair shop, there's all these things to keep track of. You want to not just stay in business, but you want to prosper. It's almost like not having the right wrench, right? Like losing your 10 millimeter, right?
Yeah, it's I was talking to somebody this morning that was saying that they're running a bunch of financial reports trying to pull this together, and weren't quite sure how to mix and kind of combine all that data
and is it
into
accounting,
a data set.
Is it budgeting? Is it what is this, right?
Right.
Well, like we talked about a couple webinars ago, we showed an Microsoft Excel version of a basic shop modeling tool where you could put the inputs in and so forth. If you guys go to, I think I clicked next here. There we go. If you go to fullbay.com, scroll down to the bottom, there's a new link there. We call it the Shop Profit Calculator. It's a financial modeling tool. And this is something you can use, and we're about to show you how it works. And feel free to share that with your friends. It's free to use, free tool. We're just giving it away. You don't have to be using Fullbay to use this. It's just free. We're putting it out there. And this is what it looks like. All right, so this is a typical shop, right? And I put my shop name as Finlay, but whatever your shop name would show up here. And we're gonna run through a couple different scenarios. So first scenario would be, let's say I am a lone wolf tech. It's just me, I have no employees, it's just me and a service truck. What would that look like if I put that into a financial modeling tool? This is what it would be. So I've got some assumptions here. I've got, up here in the top left, let's say I'm billing $80 an hour to my customers. Let's say I'm paying myself $35 an hour. It's pretty good based on most areas of the country. And let's say I am spending about 60 hours a week working, which is not atypical. It's pretty typical for a lone wolf tech driving around. They're putting in a ton of hours. And let's see, out of that, I'm able to bill 40. And of course, it's just me. So one tech, no managers, nobody in play. And we usually see about a 15% markup on parts when guys like this are coming in, starting to use our software, and they're not charging shop supplies. And then there's a little bit of overhead down here. No rent and utilities, because there's no building. It's just a mobile tech. But you got some truck and fuel costs down here, some insurance, and some other overhead costs right there. So at the end of the day, if you want to see yearly what this lone wolf tech is making, the profit of the business is relatively small, 11 grand. But as a technician down here, the cost of labor, they're making a decent amount of money, right? 109,200 in this example. So, okay, not too bad. It's basically a sole proprietorship. The business itself isn't making that much, but you're paying the bills and you're making pretty decent money, right? So what happens with financial modeling tools? You can say, well, let's look at some different scenarios. What if I increase my labor rate from $80 to $85 an hour? Watch what happens to my profit here. And by the way, over here, I mentioned targets. There's some key metrics in here: cost of labor, your cost of parts and supplies, your overhead, and your profit. And the target would be, in this tool, would be, you want to make sure your cost of labor is no more than 20% of total revenue. Your cost of parts and shop supplies is no more than 25%. Your overhead is no more than 30%. And he's doing pretty good here because he has no building, very low overhead. It's one of the advantages of being a lone wolf tech. But then the profit is way lower than it ought to be. So these are the targets, and these would be the targets we'd say, generically speaking, for any shop. So what happens if we change our labor rate from 80 to 85? Watch what happens to the profit here in the middle. Okay, we doubled it. Not bad. Doubled the profit. We didn't double the labor rate, but we doubled the profit. So that $5 an hour went right to the profit. A couple other things we could do. Well, we'll come back to efficiency. So still 67% efficiency, still working 60, billing 40. What if we change the markup to what's something more reasonable, Chris?
Yeah, when I see this, I normally just, and some of you who have onboarded or have done the kickoff call, we put in what I call the full bay price matrix.
Yeah.
Typically people are using like a flat scale, flat 15, flat 20, and maybe in the market, maybe it caps out that 20% is the max that you're going to be able to get on larger parts, but you're surely not going to add 15% on a $1 bolt and go chase that down.
Right.
You've got to double the margins on that. So you've got to sell that $1 bolt for $2.
Right.
So even if you put the ceiling at 20%, you still can pick up a lot of money below 300. And so usually you can get this to 25, 30% fairly easy with just a basic full bay matrix.
So let's get them to 30%. That'd be a hybrid rate because it's a graduated scale.
Correct.
Just depending on the cost. If we switch that from 15 to 30, now we just went up to 32,000 profit. Okay. And still not charging shop supplies, right? So
right.
We got an assumption here that the cost of shop supplies are about 3% of the labor. So what if we just covered the cost? 3%? Another $6,000. Exactly. Yeah. And shops that do charge, we typically see 7-8%. But if we just take this to 5, that gets us pretty good. Now we're at 41, right?
41, yeah.
Still relatively low for a business, but it's just one person, right? So
and they're paying themselves.
Yeah, so it's the 41 plus what they're paying themselves as a technician down here, right? The 109,200. All right, so all that's good. All that makes an impact, but nothing is as impactful as efficiency. There is nothing you can do in your shop unless you've got some crazy thing we've never seen before. There's nothing you can do in your shop that will have more impact on your bottom line, on your profit, than increasing the efficiency of your techs. Nothing.
Yep.
So watch what happens. So we haven't even touched that yet. He's at 67%. Let's say he's working 60. Let's say he's able to get, let's just add 1 hour. He's able to bill 1 more hour a week. Watch what happens to the profit. $5,000.
1 hour, $5,000.
1 more hour a week. We get this to 45, and now we're into pretty decent territory. And that, by the way, for those of you who go and use this tool, it changes to green once it gets into the target range over here on the right. So that's looking pretty good. If we get up to, let's say we charge 8% for shop supplies, that gets our profit into the range. And then maybe, let's say we actually bill 60 when we work 60. There we are.
Yeah.
100% efficient.
What's interesting, even if we started to take back, say shop supplies were at 0 and we started to modify the parts markup a little bit lower, you'll see that the largest jump, again, just to echo what Jacob just said, it's efficiency. And I often will see the lone wolf tech shows up on the scene trying to garner the business and starts making commitments that there's no charge to drive to the lot.
Right.
And that is just pure efficiency. You're working. That's where the 60 hours comes in. Or you start donating time. Oh, for this contract,
you want to be a nice guy.
Yeah,
right?
I'll do free yard checks. So even if you gave it away somewhere else, you can't give it away on the efficiency. And this is kind of, it's not an all or nothing, but the last thing you want to do is start giving away your time. If you're going to go out there and work 60, go generate $60 worth of build revenue. Even if you can't get that same margin in your market, or you can't get shop supplies because you're doing a deal with ARI or somebody that just doesn't allow it. pick it up somewhere else, or put some on the labor rate. We see that a lot as well.
If we could, I want to run another scenario here. What if we look at a 10 technician shop? What would that look like? And we won't have time, but what we're about to talk about would also apply to a 50 tech shop, 100 plus tech shop. It
Absolutely.
scales, right? So 10 tech shop, let's say, you're paying your techs 40, 30, we'll keep the labor rate at 85, and markup, with bigger shops, sometimes they're able to do a little bit more, and let's just keep shop supplies at 0. And there's going to be some managers, right, involved. So we have, maybe a service manager, maybe that's rich for you guys. It depends on what part of the country you are, but we've got some managers in there. And so for overhead, we're thinking maybe rent and utilities there, and so forth, and cost of insurance for maybe $1,500, something like that. So when all is said and done, we're in there. Obviously, for one tech, that's not a sustainable business, but we're at 10 techs, so let's switch that to 10 techs. All right, so now you're doing okay, right? Not too bad. Efficiency is pretty, it's higher than the lone wolf tech. And did I get everything right? Typically, you might have a couple people in the office and maybe a couple service writers. Maybe for them the comp is a little lower on average, so something like that. So you're turning a profit, but running a 10 technician shop, it drains a lot of life out of you. That's decent money, right? For a job, but for what you're going through running the shop, it doesn't seem quite worth it. And if you look at the profit, we're way out of range on the profit side, right? Overhead, we're actually doing pretty good. So what do you think, Chris?
Yeah, this is an easy one. Let's go after efficiency.
Okay.
Let's see if we drive
when people
that
sign
up
with us, we see some of these numbers. What do you tell them?
Well, the minimum you want to do is get to 100% efficiency. We should get all those techs. If a tech works for you and you pay them in payroll dollars, 40 hours of wages, we need to bill 40 hours of wages.
Agreed.
So
but before we go there, let's get shop supplies up where it ought to be, right? Let's say 5% on shop supplies. Did you see that?
Yep.
We go from 0 to 5%. It adds 60 grand just by charging for shop supplies, having the customer pay for those shop supplies instead of you. And then markup on parts, if we get it to 30%, once again, we just add another 50 grand. Now let's look at efficiency. So 1 more hour per tech per week. Watch the impact. 1 more hour per tech per week. Did you see that? It went from this to that. If you get them up to just 100% efficient, there you are. And if you get, we're going to talk about this in a minute with the revenue funnel, but if you get ahead of PM tracking and get your techs above 100% efficiency, let's say you got them billing on average 50 hours for 40 hours worked, there you go. There's your profit. So that's a 10 technician shop. That's not a 50 tech, 100 tech shop. That's a 10 technician shop if you do it right.
Yeah, absolutely. And there, obviously there's more to this, right? You might have some different layers of management. You might have to pay different salaries, but the main point though is that profit, nothing's driving that number as fast as that efficiency.
Right.
We can't say it enough. The graphs are showing it. The information that we're publishing right here is showing it. Super easy. Encourage all of you to go plug in your information and just look at it. Look at what if I got rid of one. So some people say, well, we're going to get rid of one of our service writers. What would that do to you? Is it really as impactful as having them go generate some more business?
If that service writer is making the techs more efficient, that is very impactful.
Correct.
So once you realize the importance of this, when you see, when I was working in a shop, it was so common to have techs line up in front of the service manager's desk, right? Waiting to get assigned something. They've got a question, whatever. It's going to really start driving you crazy seeing stuff like that happens if it isn't already. So you don't want techs standing around waiting for an assignment, waiting for a job to get authorized, waiting for parts to get priced or ordered. You want to make those processes as fast as possible to keep those guys turning wrenches.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So that's the idea, right? Don't just use your gut, use numbers, and rely on these numbers. There's this thing here. All right, number 2 is allow your cache to collect dust. And by the way, just to remind you, if you want to use that tool, share it with your friends, share it on Facebook, whatever, go to fullbay.com, scroll to the bottom, click on Shop Profit Calculator, and use it away. Bookmark it. It's awesome.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. Number 2, allow your cache to collect dust on a shelf. Not a good idea. Chris, I know this is a subject dear to your heart.
Well, I feel like we've kind of sprinkled this into several of our webinars.
Yeah,
and
we're kind of a broken record on this one.
Yeah, but every time we talk to a shop, what's the number one way? Where are the losses? I haven't ran into a shop yet that has got a perfect inventory, that's not taking losses on inventory. And it's very hard to manage, right? So getting the right tools that allow you to at least just track the inventory, get your parts markup consistently, marking up the parts correctly by customer, by product line, by vendor. It's critical, but more importantly, having a warehouse full of product is literally just like these pictures show. It's your cash sitting in storerooms, sitting on shelves, and super important to only stock what actually moves.
Yeah.
And so we have some tools that we can show you as far as how to manage this, but how do I know what moves and what doesn't move? And how do I know when to buy more or buy less? But the last thing you want to do is, and we'll show those here in a minute, is I had someone recently tell me, and I think I mentioned this on another webinar, that they got a great deal, so they bought a case. And I said, well, how many have you used this year? Well, we only sold one, but I made a lot of money on that one part. And I said, but what about all the other parts? Well, they'll eventually sell, or maybe I'll liquidate them. And I just didn't understand that. The cost of carrying that, we've talked about in another inventory, there's
up to 20%.
Yeah, and then if you lost one and the rest of the case isn't there, it just doesn't make sense, right? It was, at the end of the day, you're going to mark it up as a percentage based on what you paid for it. So it really doesn't matter. You pay more, you pay less. You're still getting your same margin on that particular part.
Yeah, it's hard to make the argument to buy way more than you need,
right,
and let it sit on the shelf for years.
Right.
Years.
We're not going to Costco to buy bars of soap that we know are getting consumed by the kids.
Right. So before we come back to the other things here, let's take a look at that. So inside Fullbay, and this is the first time we've actually shown Fullbay in a webinar.
Yeah.
So
let's go to
momentous.
The inventory reconciliation sheet.
Yeah. So one of the reports you can run is the inventory reconciliation report. And Chris, you want to walk us through this?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I find anytime we're talking about inventory at a shop, it's some shops are in tune with it, some aren't. But the idea of that top line, what was the beginning balance for the period? So this is a basic report that says, okay, how much inventory do I have in stock at the beginning of this period? And I'm really honed in on that because that's your money. So we have over a couple 100,000 that's sitting in shelves on our warehouse. The last thing I want to do is have somebody go make that that 200,000, 300,000.
Right.
Are you even watching what's happening? Because as people are buying things, they're going to be saying, hey, I think we should stock more of this. Hey, we got a great deal, so buy more. The ad came out for such and such. Let's buy some of that. At the end of the day, for that period, you shouldn't be increasing your inventory unless you're moving it, unless that stuff's committed to sell. And right inside this breakout here for the inventory reconciliation, it tells you what's moving. So if you're selling 15 or 20,000 a month, you should only be buying 15 or 20,000 a month, replenishing what you sold on a consistent basis.
In this case, we sold 13,000 and we bought 31,000. And so we start with 220, we end with 234. And I like to think about it this way. Would you feel comfortable having an employee drive to the bank, withdraw stacks of $20 bills, like just bundles, like a pallet worth, and just putting it onto the shop floor, $14,000 worth of 20s sitting on a pallet in your shop? You go crazy. No way would we allow that. But that's exactly what is happening in this scenario here.
Yep.
It's exactly what's happening.
Absolutely. And then, a lot of people don't even have tools like this. An accounting firm comes in to audit. Maybe you've been a part of an acquisition. That whoever's doing the acquisitions or who's part of the accounting team usually goes for this area in a shop to evaluate the shop, evaluate performance. But it usually takes several reports. You might be using different software, you might be using QuickBooks, whatever it is, you're running countless reports trying to pull this together. Right here in the inventory reconciliation report, you should be looking at this at least once a month, doing the reconciliation, if not twice a month. And all the reports are right here. All you have to do is scroll down. You can see all the purchases, you can see all the returns, you can see all the sales. You don't have to run a bunch of reports. So if there's a wild number, just scroll down a little bit and you'll start seeing all of the data.
It's built to be a bank statement for your inventory.
Yeah.
Just like you get a statement from the bank, you have this recap section at the top and then the detail that makes up that recap. That's exactly how we structured it when we built this report. And talk to me about cycle counts, Chris.
Yeah, so cycle counts, I'm a big believer in cycle counts. You count things that move fast and you count them monthly. Things that I call it the A, Bs, and Cs. So A's are fast moving parts, B's are things that are moving, semi-quick, and then C's are just slow moving parts. You always want to evaluate. You only stock slow moving if you have to, right? You're just beholden to a customer or something that's forcing you. Otherwise, the idea is you count it and make sure that you're not losing it.
And this poor shop, through cycle counts, most likely, they discovered that $5,258 of their parts walked out the door during the month. Unfortunately, not a great situation, but hey, at least they know about it. They realize it and they can take steps to correct it so it doesn't happen next month.
Yeah, if I were running this particular shop, I would be all over, why did my inventory go up and where is that product? Somebody needs to answer for that. That number needs to be zero or as close to zero as possible.
Yeah, so this 5,000, if we're running at a 10% profit margin overall in the shop, we got to do $50,000 worth of work just to make up for that shrink there.
Yep. And then I'm going to ask, why is it even stocked here? Was that one turbo that walked off the shelf? Like, what was that we're stocked and for what reason?
There's another report I wanted to show real quick, the inventory velocity report. This is kind of along the lines of stock what moves, not what you think moves. This gives you visibility into what in the world is actually moving.
Yeah, this is awesome. If you're doing counter sales, service orders, transfers between stores, this is giving you all of the total movement. So you're going to see velocity, the total movement, and you can basically get an idea of, should I stock more? Should I stock less? What's just not moving? If it's not moving, it's dead inventory. And I've mentioned it before that I always evaluate dead inventory. Dead inventory is tying up space. If you're expanding, if you've got a shed out back, you're building another one, you got containers. If you're moving into that area, you probably have too much inventory. If you put it on a 40-foot container, there's no mechanic going to the front of that container this week to get parts. It's impossible, right? Where are you going to unload the whole container? So if you're not moving it, this report's going to show you and help you with some information. You can also sort it, filter it, search for a part. Definitely, these two reports are key.
Inventory velocity. Okay, real quick, so we can move on to the next one. If you're going to spend money, spend it on stuff that's actually going to generate revenue, ROI. So that $15,000, deploy it on something like, I think they cost more than this, but maybe build out a DPF cleaning station. You can do this as a sublet. For other shops in the area. What else, Chris?
Well,
so many options.
I'm a believer.
An alignment machine.
Yeah, an alignment machine, or you're buying a diag tool that you can charge for that's going to help you solve a problem.
ROI, because inventory has a negative ROI,
right?
With
so
the carrying costs, it's very tough to overcome that.
Absolutely, use the money to make money. I talked to a person back in December who let me know that he had 2 Harley Davidsons, he had a boat, 3 different cars, and the business was funding all of this. And that's great. It's great to have toys.
It's a happiness ROI.
Yeah, right. It's great to do that. It's great to have toys. One of the toys was, a Harley. He was going to buy another one. And, I do that. If that's what you're into, do it. I'm a big toy guy too, right? But I always make sure that there's that money didn't just come right from the profits of
Make sure you know the numbers.
Shop.
You're not just going after your gut. Like,
right.
Oh, I've got a bunch of money in the bank. I'm going to go blow it. Not that this individual did that. But,
no.
I definitely have seen that a lot. A misunderstanding of, accrual versus cash accounting. Like, just because you happen to have a bunch of money today doesn't mean you actually made a profit last month. You can actually make a loss, and maybe some AR came in late, and suddenly you've got some cash. You got to be careful.
I'm definitely a believer in you store your cash, right? And as soon as you have a surplus, maybe you're covering payroll for 30 days or you're covering liabilities for 90 days and you've got this piggy bank stocked up and there's cash to burn after that. Well, then maybe you're making business acquisition costs or, you're buying new equipment, service trucks, et cetera, or you're buying the boat if that's what you want to buy. But you have a great salary. If you're paying yourself, you have money to go do that with too. So unless you're trying to grow the business, then the cash should be used for other stuff.
Yeah, definitely. All right, number 3, tune out the voice of the customer. That's one way to do it. Tune out the voice of the customer. So thinking about, so most of our customers are going to be fleets, just by virtue of being in commercial repair. So what are your customers, if they're fleets, most concerned about? Well, it's uptime, like maximizing unit uptime, minimizing downtime. I was at HDAW last week, and someone made a comment to me that, and they're on the parts side, but this is the convention annually for the parts manufacturers and distributors in Las Vegas. Basically, it's rare to lose a customer over price. It's much more common to lose them over a missed deadline. So not getting a repair done in time, not getting a part delivered in time. So time is very important in the commercial repair world. So that's important. And uptime, reducing the cost of the fleet, reducing the cost of running a fleet, and then DOT compliance. And that's kind of the trifecta, right? Where if you can build your shop in a way that you're rowing in the same direction of your customer, that you're aligned with your customer on that, it's very important, and you're going to have customers for life. We talk about building a shop into a country club, basically, where you don't have to do any marketing because you already have your customers in place and you have enough work from them that you're keeping your techs more than 100% efficient, and you're just fine tuning the well-oiled machine. That's the ideal, but you can only do that if you've aligned yourself with the voice of the customer. And one of the reasons we built the customer portal was to basically check these boxes, right? It's in the interest of, and you want to adopt this as a shop, to the extent you can. Some things are on a need to know basis, but transparency, visibility, compliance. The idea of the customer portal in FullBay is to serve those things up basically on a silver platter. Transparency, right?
As overseeing a fairly large fleet, what you just said, it totally resonates. One of the biggest frustrations is your dispatcher has to coordinate with the shop to take the fleet out of to take the power unit out of service, the repairs that get done, and whether it costs more money or not, the last thing you want is to get the truck back. Something else was wrong and they didn't fix it, or they didn't even take the time to do an inspection or a walk around and catch that a tire was out, or a marker light was out. Oh, it was here for a water a leak. And so the other thing that I had trouble with was we had spreadsheets upon spreadsheets. We had no tools to manage the fleet. And it was very tough for me to see, well, when is my fleet in compliance? And I was always calling the shop and kind of going back and forth. And I think that if we can show them the fleet report, I think that this is a great segue to kind of show inside of FullBay. I didn't have this tool. I basically had a guy named Corey, and he made this. And he manually would make it, and it was only as good as everybody who gave Corey information. So
what we're looking at now, this is the fleet report in FullBay. You can run this for any one of your customers inside FullBay, but then your customers in their portal, they can run this whenever they want. And this one's got a ton of PMs on it. I mean, typically maybe it's 3 to 5. In a typical fleet, maybe you're going to have more. But it's recapping everything up at the top. You can see which PMs are in good standing, which are coming due in the next few days. And then if you want to see the detail down here, it's all there. This is, typically a hyper accurate fleet listing. A lot of time, most fleets out there are very small. And a lot of times the customer portal becomes the de facto source of truth for the fleet, like the source of truth for what their fleet is, the actual list. So you got this, and
for compliance, just click into like unit 1. Let's just go into the details. We actually can go right into the equipment list, right from that fleet report, whether we're the shop or the customer. And I can see exactly what PMs are in compliance or out of compliance with this vehicle. And I can even drill even further and go to the service history. And from the side of the road, on my phone, or on a tablet or portal shop, I can actually go back and see when the last repair was done, who did it, the frequency of the repairs, etc. And then at the customer level, I can also download this information in the shop and start running cost per unit reports, or on the customer portal. Very powerful tool to cover all of the bullet points. With this though, this is a key to a private fleet. These are like the fundamentals. These are the the minimum things to basically
Yeah.
land a contract and manage a fleet.
Yeah, if you talk about FMCSA compliance, these 3 points, well, DOT compliance, they need to have evidence of a PM program in place that's in place. They need to have evidence that they're following it, and they need to have, I think it's 13 months worth of records on hand for an on-site inspection. Really, the customer portal, I think, checks all those boxes.
It does, and I think that's. I've been through a couple of DOT audits. I went through a 20-year one. Everybody was afraid. There was phone calls getting made. People were getting threatened with their jobs, right? Had to pass it. What was interesting was that it's very tough to pass this portion of the audit. So we did get a couple of fines. We passed. We ultimately passed with satisfactory. We had a few hits in here. What we couldn't do was prove that the driver wrote it up and that it actually got repaired. We were struggling with file cabinets and paper trail, trying to rifle through, matching up dates by unit. It was quite the event. Have a DOT audit with a system like FullBay, and problems start to go away.
Yeah, this unit, full service history, right there. There it is. Searchable, drillable, all of it's there. Who did the repair? When was it done? And so forth. So. And
I can get to it from the side of the road with my phone. Yep. If I'm a driver at another company, or if I'm just the safety director at the other company.
Another thing is, make sure you're using estimates in commercial repair. Sometimes you have the trust relationship with the customer where they say, just get it done. I trust you. But to scale a business, you as the owner don't necessarily want to be involved in every single repair. It's not scalable, especially when you're dealing with larger companies, third-party fleets, and so forth. Make sure you're using estimates where appropriate, because that can help you enforce policies that protect, making sure the parts are marked up correctly, we're using the right labor rate, so on and so forth. That stuff can get enforced automatically without you as an owner, if you're an owner, having to be involved intimately with everything, single repair. And then also, obviously, you want to make sure that you've got consistent pricing and you can standardize procedures. There's a lot we can go into, but in the interest of time, just say that, make sure that you're utilizing the tools that you have at your disposal. And those of you who are FullBay customers, there may be a lot in there that you could start using that you're not today. And of course, we're always happy to walk people through that stuff. All right, so polling question 2. Which financial system do you use? Are you using QuickBooks, Sage, Microsoft Dynamics, NetSuite, or something else? Paper Ledger. I'm going to launch this question here. There we go. All right, so if you guys want to put that in, they say, I think it's 87% of SMBs, so small and medium-sized businesses, use QuickBooks. And Sage is very popular in Canada. QuickBooks is becoming more and more so. I've used all 4 of these in a past life. And all right, let's close that poll and share the results. Looks like the poll pretty much bears out the data that we've seen before. 84% on QuickBooks, 3% on Sage, then 13% on other. Very cool. Thanks for that response, guys. So number 4 is use the wrong tools. And this one is near and dear to our heart because we believe in tools. We think we believe that tools are very effective. We consider ourselves tool builders. Chris, talk to me about, why is having an on-premise server kind of troublesome, kind of difficult to deal with? This picture of a guy right here, do you have somebody coming to your shop like this guy to diagnose the server, fix the backup that failed, so on and so forth?
Yeah, a lot of times what I'll hear is just having access, remote access to the server, slowness, they'll have some speed issues, but security. The biggest thing I keep hearing about over and over is that the shop is required to have a server on premise to run their shop management software. That server gets compromised because the security hasn't been updated, because you're constantly got to have an IT resource updating security policies and the hardware. Every 3 years, you're buying another server, roughly, if it makes it that long. But once you lose your data and it's hostage, we've had several customers say that it's ransomware, right? That data's been held hostage on them.
Lots of different things can go wrong, and they're expensive too.
Correct.
I mean, are you a repair shop or are you a data center, right?
Right.
It used to be that you had to do all of that, but with the advent of cloud computing, and it's so cheap now to put things in the cloud, and there's a lot of benefits to that.
But nightly backups, just about everybody I talk to, they've got somebody on deck or somebody in the shops assigned to do a nightly backup.
Yep.
Backup can't be opened. You can't even view the files that you're backing up. But if you don't back up, then you're losing that data. So It's kind of an interesting proposal, the way that some of the systems are set up these days.
Another advantage, you get the real-time updates, right? Versus maybe your version of the software sitting on your servers out of date with the most current version of whatever the software is. With cloud-based software, you log in the next time and it's just updated. It's just there. And then one of the things that we get asked about from time to time is, Fullbay, we love Fullbay and everything. It generates customer invoices, vendor bills, and so forth. When are you going to finish building out the rest of it so we can get rid of QuickBooks? And my response to that is never. We will never try to build QuickBooks. I think QuickBooks has solved the problem that we don't need to touch. And as long as we have a great API connection into QuickBooks, we're good. And that's the modern approach, the best of breed approach, which is for your accounting software, whether it's QuickBooks, NetSuite, or whatever, to get the best possible system that you can. And then for the shop management software, get the best possible system you can and make sure they can talk to each other. And that's the approach. That's the modern way to do it, instead of trying to boil the ocean where you have to compromise. Well, I like the shop management side, but they have built-in accounting, so I can't use QuickBooks anymore. And so I kind of have to make compromises. You want the best of breed.
Yeah. If you're, what we often find is that the shop software is trying to do QuickBooks and then it can't do it effectively.
Right.
The updates, et cetera. I personally just see it time and time again, without naming some of the competitors that we convert all the time, moving over to a clean P&L, just having a clean P&L
Nice
that's sitting in,
start.
Inside of QuickBooks. It's nice, it's organized, it's very, very clear, those overhead expenses, where they are, how you're doing allocations, how you can class track and organize it. You actually have a financial system to start tracking and organizing your repairs, writing off internal expenses, versus some of these workarounds. We've seen some fairly interesting scenarios inside of other software where they're trying to be the financial system and then they lose track of the finances as they're creating workarounds for internal expenses and other areas. So
the cloud is opening up all kinds of possibilities for having higher quality tools, right? And all right, so moving on to the next slide here. Last polling question. How much do your service writers or service managers sell? And what we mean by that is, are they just processing orders, processing customer repair requests, or do they take it to the next level? Are they upselling work on existing orders, or even the next level, proactively selling PMs or future work, or all of the above? We might have worded that one a little awkward because I guess C would be all of the above, but so we'll count C and D the same. And the reason we ask this is going into our fifth and final point here, which is, do you know, are you managing your funnel?
Yeah.
What the heck is a funnel? We're going to talk about that in a second. All right, so we got a lot of responses here, sharing the results. Looks like 54% all of the above, good. About a third, a little less than a third, 29% are only processing customer calls, and there's a little bit of upselling. So proactively selling PMs or future work, a majority. So excellent, that's good to hear. Our next slide deals with that. So ignore your revenue funnel. It's something you don't want to do. So don't ignore your revenue funnel. Okay, Chris, what is a funnel?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I don't do this, but
well, what's interesting.
And by the way, these are parachutes, not jellyfish over here. These are parachutes.
What's interesting is, sometimes some shops are just taking orders as they come in, right? The whirlwind is happening, but within the customer base, you have all different types of sales opportunities or opportunities that are kind of at the top of the funnel. And what your goal is to try to bring those through this funnel or this workflow to generate an invoice or generate a sale. So you've got all these opportunities. They're all up floating around at the top. You're trying to pull them through a funnel to close the deal or close a sale.
Are you managing the top of your funnel?
Right. And so at that point, a lot of times what we'll say is, how do you use your current software as a sales tool? Or did you know FullBay has sales tools in the software? And I think that we underestimate that a PM, a preventative maintenance schedule, going and generating those PMs or looking at all the pending repairs where a customer said no yesterday or last week, somebody's going to do that repair. Is it going to be you or another shop down the road? Leveraging estimates that you mentioned earlier. Those are all key areas that you can leverage the funnel.
Yeah,
are going to drive revenue. And the customer portal, not to forget about that, but actually putting it in front of your customer to just simply submit a repair request instead of going through the effort of calling you to explain it.
Right. Go on site to your customer. Help them save their customer portal to their computer.
Exactly.
Bookmarks. Save it to their phone. Your shop logo becomes the icon. It's really cool. So the more you can put in up here at the top of the funnel, the more revenue you're going to have. And what are those sources? So preventive maintenance, like Chris talked about, repair requests, estimates, pending repairs. Are you mining that? Business can be cyclical. I mean, most shops have more work to do than they can handle, but there's still downtimes. And how do you make sure that you cover the downswings in business? Well, go and drum up business using these tactics, like at the top of the funnel. And should we look at FullBay?
Yeah, let's show them the service page. This is one area.
FullBay, those of you using FullBay may not think of it like this, but it's a really good way to think of it. If you go to the service page, if you've got access, there are tabs on here related to your funnel. So you got your pending repairs. So this will show you everything that you found on a job that the customer, said no to in the past. It's going to show here on pending repairs, and you can spin up a new service order based on that, call up the customer, get things going. Estimates, your quick estimates, your PMs, and then obviously the repair requests coming in on the phone line. You don't always control that. They just come in. That's a source. But are you making it easier for your customers to request a repair? Do they have easy access to their customer portal where they can see, they wake up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night. Oh my goodness, I totally forgot there's a big pool of oil on the ground, and is it going to be taken care of? They can enter the repair request knowing that you guys are going to see it as soon as you come in, and you can get it handled. Are you taking the friction out of the process for repair requests?
What I love about this service page too is that you don't have to run a bunch of reports to figure it out. It's right inside your workflow. If you click on pending repairs, you get to choose the customer and just go. Pick a date range and go, and literally just run it. It'll tell you exactly for that customer what are the pending repairs. Same thing with estimates. You just click on it. It shows you open estimates and their dollar value. Very, very simple tools to use. And if you're slow or you catch your breath or you're at the end of the day and you should be looking out the following week, 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, instead of just tomorrow. And a lot of times that's what we get caught. We get caught in what's called the whirlwind, and we're just all about getting through today and all of the activity of today. At some point, you got to be looking out into the future and knowing that if you have an opportunity out there and you don't close the deal, they're going to get the repair done somewhere else because you know something's wrong.
Yep, absolutely. We could do a whole webinar on the revenue funnel.
Yeah,
we should.
Maybe.
All right. So that's all we've got. This webinar is going to be available on fullbay.com. You can also see our last webinar, and we're working on getting more past webinars up there. And you're also going to be able to register for the next one. It will be up within 48 hours. And we've got a little bit of time for questions. Will I be able to access this webinar at a later date? Yes, fullbay.com. And by the way, go to, we're switching to QuickBooks for FullBay, awesome. Go to fullbay.com and you can see the tool. Let me show you real quick. If you go to fullbay.com, it's going to be down at the bottom, right here, the shop profit calculator. You can get to it there. We also have some good articles down there on how to price your parts, set your labor rate, so on and so forth. So that's there. And I'm looking and seeing that we're out of time. We see all the other questions in here. We're going to get back with you guys that didn't get your question answered. We'll follow up with you and get that. And thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next month. Thanks, guys.